All right. Despite the fact that Charlie is a St. Louis Cardinals fan, it is my pleasure to introduce Charlie and Chris, who are going to talk about breaking into a Jeep and doing bad things to a Jeep. Let's give them a big hand.
Awesome. How's everyone doing? Round of applause. Great. Fantastic.
10 minutes to get the sound on. That was not nerve-wracking.
Yeah. As you know, I'm Razor. This is Blade. And we're here today
hack the planet.
to talk about hacking a car. What this is not going to be every detail we have. We're going to drop our 90-page paper, 90-plus pages on Monday, all the tools, exploits, all that good shit. So we're going to go fast and loose. Whoa, bottle of booze.
Also, don't be disappointed, but the Chrysler representative will not be coming at the end of the talk.
We don't have a rep. Sorry. LL Cool J was our rep.
Yeah.
PSA before we get going on, stop saying unhackable. Please, like you're just going to look silly. And it's just going to give some people incentive to look at it. So
read to the audience what the Daimler executive says.
There is no way you could hack a Mercedes-Benz from outside the car, a senior Daimler engineer executive said.
Impossible.
Impossible. Because you can't really hack it. You have a control gateway that you have to go through. And apparently they found the secret of writing perfect software. So round of applause for them. Good job.
Yeah. Woo! So when they say you can't hack it, they mean you can't hack it except if you go through the control unit.
Yeah, exactly. You can't hack it unless you can hack the gateway. Then you can actually hack it.
Right.
So I guess it's, tomato,
Seems
tomato,
legit.
potato, tomato. We're going to go through all the wireless vectors. We're going to talk about how we got cellular, hacked the car over cell. And then we're going to go through some payloads that we use to do the cool stuff. And we're going to go really fast to this section that's basically a bunch of IDA Pro screenshots. Those parts, while super boring to talk to in public, took us like 3.5 months. So that's really where all the hacking was.
This whole talk really is that.
Yeah, the whole talk is that, because that's how you go from being on a wireless portion to actually having physical control. And it's super difficult, at least for us. All right. Charlie, you want to go?
Okay. Do we trade off mics?
Let's do this thing.
Do here? Ready? Now. All right, so cool. So let's talk about what it means to even remotely attack a vehicle and what you need to look for and that sort of thing. So the first thing is you need to remotely attack it, get code running somehow on it. And that means you have to look at the attack surface of the vehicle. And so most vehicles are going to have these types of attack surface. So you're going to have maybe a Telmax unit where it's hooked up through cellular. You're going to have Bluetooth if you're nearby. You might have apps that you download to your car, which is coming, believe it or not. So that's like super scary. You have keyless entry like Sammy showed yesterday. You actually have a little chip in your key fob that's talking back and forth to a radio receiver in the car. TPMS, sending information about the pressure in your tires to your car. And in some cars, it's actually a Wi-Fi hotspot, so that's another vector. So,
yeah. When most people think of remotely hacking a car, this is the portion they, I think, tend to focus on. And while it's important, because that's how you get in, we're going to kind of show you that that was really only one small step in a whole series of events.
Right. All right. So then what's next? Then is the part we were talking about that was the hardest for us, was getting from your code running on the car to where you can actually talk to the CAN network. Because remember, the CAN network is where all the computers in the car live that control the physical things. So that's your step 2. Step 3 is then figuring out which CAN messages to send to make it do physical stuff, right? So every car manufacturer, I should say, is going to have different messages. It's all proprietary. So you have to figure that out. And the things you're going to care about are things like the ABS system, the transmission, and then all sorts of other stuff that you're eventually going to want to control.
Yeah. We heard that you can buy these databases, but they just won't sell it to anyone. So what you do is you buy a car, you write a sniffer, you look at the sniffer, and you figure out how stuff works. That's essentially what you need to do to figure out physical controls for the in-vehicle system.
Yeah, shockingly, they would not sell it to us.
Shockingly, they wouldn't give us the codes.
And then finally, you actually send the messages. That step 3, you needed a car, right, to actually see what the messages are. But you only need one car, and then the same messages will work for all the cars of that kind. And when you're sending the messages, you're going to particularly send ones for if the car has more advanced features, it's going to have more things you can control. So if it has pre-collision system, you might be able to jam on the brakes. If it has self-parking, you might be able to turn the steering wheel or whatever.
Yeah, that's why we always grabbed cars that could self-park, because we figured that would give us the best shot at having messages that control steering.
All right, so let's talk about the car we had. You want to go?
Yeah.
You can stay in there. I'll just.
Yeah. All right, so the car, if you haven't noticed yet, it was a white 2014 Jeep Cherokee 4x4 Latitude Edition.
So this is a car in an unfortunate situation where the brakes are not
It has
working.
some screaming guy in the front seat right now as he's going into the ditch.
If you notice, his brake lights are on, but for some reason he's not braking.
Weird.
All right.
Yeah, so the Jeep came with a system called Uconnect, which is produced by Harman. You might know them from speakers and audio and all that stuff. So the Uconnect system in this car was purchased from Chrysler, from Harman, and that's how they put them on the car. So they don't make all this
killer
stuff, right?
speakers, Chris.
What's that?
They make killer speakers.
They do.
You see what I did there?
Yeah, I see. Killer speakers. Go to the next one. If you buy one of these or buy a few of these like we did, you rip them apart, you'll notice, it has the nice part that you usually see. And if you look at the boards inside, there's kind of two daughter boards connected to the LCD portion. The one has a Sierra wireless card, the AR5550. That does, your cell communications type stuff. It even has the carrier printed on it, Sprint, so we didn't need to try to figure that out. The other section had a Renaissance V850, which seems to be pretty ubiquitous in the automotive world when dealing with CAN controls. So if you looked at this board, you would say, hey, there's air between these two sections. Theoretically, that would be an air gap by definition, right? But we're going to show you later on how that's not essentially true.
Yeah, we'll talk lots about that chip. Chris and I are currently air gapped.
We are currently air gapped.
All right. So then the Uconnect system, the main chip is Texas Instruments OMAP chip, and you see it runs ARM, it's 32 bits. The operating system it runs is QNX, kind of a Linuxy sort of deal. And so you can, some commands like ls you would expect work, but like if you would try to do other things, they don't necessarily work. But still, it's an environment that we're comfortable working in.
Yeah,
which is cool.
And as you see, though, there's a bunch of different chips and kind of a bunch of different operating type systems on this thing. So it's not just one OS with one chip.
All right. Talk about
All right. So we jailbroke the Jeep. We actually showed that last year. And the main purpose of doing this was to explore the system, right? This is not needed. I repeat, not for the remote stuff that we're doing this time. But if you want to investigate a system, you want to have a live example. And if you could jailbreak it and get a shell, then that's a good way to do it.
So later on, we'll show you how to remotely attack cars, these cars. And we don't need physical access to begin with. So no physical access needed, but on your own car, you can do this if you want to play around with it. So you can stick in a super special USB stick, do the upgrade, and then it says upgrading jailbroken, it says on the thing. So.
It normally doesn't say jailbroken when you update it.
Well, it normally does on my car, but not most cars.
Maybe on this one.
All right. So next up is Wi-Fi. Am I doing this? All right. So this particular car and other cars that have this Uconnect system offer up a hotspot capability. And this is something you can turn on, and then it's like the default is WPA2, and you can talk to it and that sort of thing. So it's super cool. If you're like jamming down the road, like your kids can be online and play.
It was great when we were doing the research. I could get on Twitter on my laptop while we were in the middle of doing stuff as well. It was great.
Totally. I'd be driving down the highway and I'd just be on Twitter, and the auto steering would be on. It'd be like, this is so nice.
Great. It's the future.
I know, it was the future. All right. So anyway, so that was our first plan of attack, was to go after the Wi-Fi, because it's like, well, I get Wi-Fi. I don't really know how some of the other, like how a wireless tire pressure sensor works. I have no idea. But even if you could find an attack against the Wi-Fi hotspot portion, it's not really that cool, because it's not on by default. So you have to pay for the Wi-Fi hotspot, and it's like quite expensive. So it's $35 a month, and so most people are not going to have that on. And even if they do have it on, you have to figure out a way to join their network. And I'll show you that it's like a pretty random looking password.
It's a random WPA2 password, so it's not like you can do something easy to get on the network.
Right. So I paid for this for about a whole year. So I gave whoever, Harman or.
So we're taking donations.
Right.
Charlie needs like $350 plus for the year he had it. So
I know. I'm the only one.
Throw some change up front. So
whenever I have problems, I would call and I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm having problems with my Wi-Fi or whatever," and they'd be like, "Oh, Mr. Miller." It's like no one ever pays for this except me.
The one guy.
I know. So anyway, let's check out the password to see how hard it would be to join this network. And you can look at this code, and if you read it, it's like it calls time, and then it starts getting random values, and so it figures out a link between 8 and 12 for the password, and then it just picks random like ASCII characters for the password. So you have to expect like somewhere between 8 and 12 random characters. I mean, that's pretty random, right? It's going to be hard to guess that. But it's seeded on the time. So if you know what second it's seeded on, then it's, there's one password for that. So if you can kind of get an idea of what time they started at, then you can know what password to choose.
The car's a 2014, so you would assume it was made sometime before 2014 and probably after 2012, right? So there's a limited space.
Right. And it's like when they turn it starts when you first turn it on. So you figure like, okay, well, they might turn it on in the factory. Otherwise, like some dealer turned it on. But yeah, so you get some idea. And you can do the math, and you can figure out that if you start to figure out how passwords based on the time, it's somewhere around 15 million if you're optimized a little bit, 7 million guesses. And if you know what you're doing, which we don't for Wi-Fi, you could imagine doing this in about an hour. So the attack would be cruising down the highway, you spot your vulnerable Jeep, and then you just kind of like
super creepy, just cruising by it for an hour. Yeah. And I'm not afraid to get super creepy. I'm just saying it would be.
Yeah, it's a little creepy. And then, so then if you eventually join the network, then if there was a vulnerability, you could attack it. But yeah, so Chris has no problem putting Andy Greenberg in a ditch, but he feels very bad about following a car for an hour.
I don't feel bad, driving Greenberg off the road, but creeping on someone for that long is a little bit weird.
All right, so that's not ideal, right, to take an hour. But there's actually a way you can do it a lot easier. So this is code from the head unit that shows what to do when it's trying to figure out what time it is. Because the very first time you turn it on, it has no idea what time it is. And so it talks to, you see this function on the top, get V850 real-time clock. That is the chip that talks to, say, the cellular connection. And so they can get the time accurately through the cell towers. And so there's this code, though, and it says, like, well, if that failed, if I don't know the time from the cellular network, then I just default to January 1st, 2013. So until it figures it out, it just picks that as a time. And so I looked at my password on my head unit, and it was this thing on top. Please don't join my WPA2 network. And you can figure out what time that corresponds to, right? So you can just sort of run a mapping and see. And it turns out that time corresponds to January 1st, 2013, 32 seconds after that.
So you can imagine a car factory, right? And they're coming off the line, and eventually they get to get their comms, and they're all coming out kind of at the same time. And there you go. Most of them will have, there's only a very limited set of passwords now that you need to try if someone didn't reset it.
Right. So when they turn the car on, it took 30 seconds for the head, or for the cellular. 32 seconds for the Wi-Fi to come up, and it's like, oh, what time is it? I need to set my password. And it's like, well, I don't know yet, so just say it's like January 1st. And so there's really only like 10 or 20 passwords you would expect. So you can join the Wi-Fi network. That's not actually a problem. The big problem still is like the fact that no one really has it on except me. But nonetheless, we will continue on and see what would happen if you could join the Wi-Fi network. Could you do something bad?
We figured Wi-Fi is better than being connected, right? So we're making progress.
Right. So you can run Nmap, of course, is the first thing you would think to do. And you'll see there's some open ports. Some of them, like in the paper, I think we say what they all are. But anyway, I know what they all are. They're mostly like crazy stuff. But the one that's really cool is they have an IRC server, so you can like rock out with your friends.
Yeah, which we were stoked that this car could IRC first. It was going to be great.
But it turns out it's not
pound
IRC.
hack.
It's not IRC. It's not that. But it's something called dbus. So dbus is it's running on port 667 on all these vehicles. And what it is it's a inter-process communications for all the like local processes. So it's like the idea is one process needs to like send a message or call a method on some other process, and it does that.
These can require authentication, but it just so happened, and lucky for us on the Jeep, this dbus service allowed anonymous connections and IPC type stuff. So we used a program called Defeat, which is a GUI, and then we used dbus Python for writing all our scripts and exploits and stuff like that.
Right. So just sort of like in principle, it seems like it's a bad idea that this port's there because it's
RPC without any auth in a car seems like not the best idea. Right?
Yeah. It's designed for processes to talk to each other. It's not really designed for like outside things to be talking to it. So and then they didn't have authentication. So we were pretty sure that we could find something here. So if you load up this Defeat program, you can start to list on the side a bunch of the services that are available. And there are things like, if you can't read, com.harman.service.systeminfo, com.harman.service.tuner, and so on. And for each of these services, there are certain methods you can call. And again, you can just query it for that, and it'll give you all these methods. And then you'll see things like, for the service com Harman service layer manager, there's a method called view black screen, or View, DTV, HMI2, and all this stuff. So
they're just everywhere. Like you could read these things for hours and hours and hours.
right. So there's just methods for like everything you can imagine, and it's like, well, this huge attack surface is available. Surely there's going to be a bug.
We sure hope so.
And there was. So these services and methods and stuff are backed by Lua scripts on the vehicle. So I had to learn to read Lua, and I was awful. And the first thing I looked for, because it's like, is there memory corruption? Nah, it's just a script. It's like, let's look for like something easier than memory corruption.
Memory corruption is hard. Let's go shopping, and by shopping I mean learn Lua. So that's what we did. Right.
So what we did was we looked for command line injections first, and pretty quickly found one. Actually, we found several. So this is one. So if you're trying to remove a track from the nav trail service, I don't know what that is. I guess it's for navigating or something.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
I don't know why you remove tracks, but whatever.
Yeah.
So it turns out that if you pass it in a file name that has shell meta characters like semicolon, so if you say, please remove the track, blah, semicolon, like, ls or something, it will run that command for you.
So we started looking through a bunch of Lua scripts and then just quit even looking for command line injection because there are so many of them that we decided that why find them all? You don't want to spend hours finding every single one, and we have one, right? So theoretically, we could attack this thing.
Yeah, so at this point, if you can join someone's Wi-Fi network, by this command line injection, you can get shell commands to run. But then you have to figure out how to elevate privileges. Oh, wait, no, it's running as root.
No,
Never
everything
mind,
runs as root. Don't worry, you don't have to elevate privileges.
All right, so anyway, I was like super proud. I was like, I've been like a computer hacker like 15 years. I was like, I knew there would be command injection, so I found it. I was like, this is awesome. And then I kept looking at some of the more methods, and I found there's this other method in NavTrail service called execute.
Charlie, what does that method do?
It executes stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah, so this method takes in a parameter, and that parameter is shell commands you want to execute.
So if you look below, you'll see a 4-line Python script. That's the exploit for 1.4 million cars right there. It's 4 lines of Python. We thought we were going to have to do something super cool and super sexy.
Yeah,
there
4 lines of Python. Give it up for the Python.
Yay, Python.
I mean, to be fair, one of those lines is an import statement, so that's like a lot of code.
And if you see in the Python script, it's we're calling netcat. That's not because we put it on there. Luckily for us, it was already on there, so we already had netcat. It was great.
And so just to show like what talented speakers we are, here's a screenshot from our talk last year where we were talking about like remote attack services of vehicles. And if you look really close, we show that port 667 is open on the Jeep, and we just laugh it off. But that's actually the entire vulnerability of this year's talk.
Exactly. Years in the making.
This is accidental disclosure, maybe is a term?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know what the terms are these days.
All right. So anyway, at this point, if you're on the Wi-Fi network, if they paid for it and you join, you can get code running on their head unit. So what can you do, Chris?
Oh, you can do all kinds of stuff. We wrote a thing called GPS Tracker 3000, and if you're wondering what it does, it tracks GPS. So what we did is got the car to spit out its GPS coordinates because it had a method to do that with a Lua script to a web server. We pulled the web server and then updated on a Google map. So Charlie would go out to the store and I'd turn on the tracker and we could watch him go. And I could tell when he's going faster because the pin drops would be farther apart, right? And he was going slower. The pin drops would be closer together. You put them all in a nice map, package that up. I'm sure we could package it and sell it to the NSA now. That'd be great. Track everyone in here.
Again, in the complex psyche of Chris Valasek, he has no problem tracking me driving around, but he wouldn't want to drive next to me.
No, I wouldn't want to drive next to him, but doing it from the internet's not creepy.
And I want to also emphasize that this was not like we got code running and then we injected something into some process or did something complicated. This is just a method call into this unauthenticated RPC service. So you can do
this isn't even hacking the head unit. You're just saying, hey, where are you? And it's like, here I am. And so that's basically all it does.
You could have done this without even finding that execute method. This is a feature of D-Bus in this car.
So we could also do other stuff. If you saw the video, we turned the AC on Andy Greenberg full blast, right? You can just turn it on, you pass it a number, and it goes. Additionally, as you've probably seen too, turn the radio up and turn the volume the whole way up. 32, I believe, was the highest number, and it's very loud. We'll give a demonstration of all this.
Hey, Charlie, you ready to hack a car with no wires?
I am. Let's do it. Hey, audio dudes, turn up the sound.
Turn it up.
Nothing in the ODB2 port. No wires. No computers.
Anything that is
Hey, Charlie, give this car some style.
and a job.
There we go. Change the channel for me if you could.
Oh, there's some hip hop.
St. Louis Hot 103.
Turn that up.
It's so loud you can't even hear yourself think in the car.
Well, let me try to turn it off.
But he's gonna try to turn them off.
And then you can kill a service that controls the knob, so you can't turn it down at all. It just stays this way forever. Which we thought was cool, right? You have a service that it actually involves physical controls.
So
Well,
then he
hopefully
turns
that's
it off
better.
because then at least you know
It'll go back to normal.
Huh?
Nope.
I hope you like, R&B.
Hot 103 it is.
All right. So anyway, that's what you can do just through the radio. But we haven't talked about physical control or anything yet because we'll see that you can't actually do it yet. It takes more work. So we were jazzed, but it was well, you still need to do the stupid thing about joining the Wi-Fi and no one has a Wi-Fi on. So can we do this over cellular, over some other interfaces instead? And if you just run Netstat, you'll see that the port 667 and almost all the other services are actually bound to all the interfaces, not just the Wi-Fi one. So it's it seems like maybe we can do it over cellular. So the first thing first is to see if we can do it, we need to find out what the Jeep's IP address is and see if we can talk to it. So in here you'll see the interface for the Wi-Fi, and then you'll see the other bolded number is what its IP address is, just on the Sprint network. And then the one that's 68 dot something is what you would see out on the internet at large.
So if this Jeep connected to your web server, you would see that 68.28 number. But internally to Sprint network, it's 2128, whatever it is there.
Right. So the first thing we tried was, well, probably the cell towers are going to block traffic. So let's get tricky and buy a femto cell and try it.
So I bought some femto cells on eBay, and every single one I bought, I would try to activate, and they're like, no, it's registered as stolen, which sucked. So I had a stack of them. I was like, Jesus, what do I do with these things? And then finally, I had to go sign up for a Sprint contract I have for 2 years now, which is useless, to get another femto cell that we could use. Which sucked.
So if you want to buy a femtocell, Chris has some cheap ones.
I got some cheap ones. I'm selling them for $19 in the back when we're done, so hit me up.
So once we were on the femtocell, we could actually talk to that port 667. So this is a huge win because now we don't need to talk over this Wi-Fi, which might not be on. Every car with this Uconnect system has an IP address. It has a cellular turned on. So now every car is vulnerable.
You may not even know that you have it, but it's on. And
Right.
the cool thing is the only thing we had to change in the exploit was the IP. So it's the same 4 lines of Python, but now we're doing it over cellular instead of on the Wi-Fi stuff, right?
I was super worried it might be 5 lines now, but
Yeah.
luckily
Luckily, there was no refactoring. Our QA process was seamed. Our test cases were good, and then no additional regressions were needed.
Yeah. So then we're cool, it worked on the femtocell, but then I got to carry a femtocell backpack or some ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
So we were well, let's just try it from my cell phone on the same cell tower as the Jeep. So we tried that, and it was oh my God, it works.
Yeah.
So it's oh, that femtocell, we spent a month setting up, throw it in the garbage.
Yeah. Oh, and also I'm locked into a 3-year Sprint contract now. Thanks.
Yep.
Don't need it.
Yeah. So anyway.
Got me a Windows phone.
So then I was okay, well, let's see. Is it really, it's probably just because we're on the same cell tower, and if you go to another cell tower, they'll block it. So I drove 5 miles from my house, and I tried it, and it still worked. And I was well, I don't really know. Is that the same cell tower or whatever? I was convinced it was a new one, but Chris thought it was the same cell tower.
Yeah. I didn't know. I don't know.
And so then Chris tries it from Pittsburgh. I'm in St. Louis, he's in Pittsburgh.
From my Windows phone, by the way. Let's get this straight. It was from the Windows phone.
Okay, so he's making an excuse if you haven't figured it out. So he tries to talk to port 667 from Pittsburgh, doesn't work. So we're
Nothing.
So there's some sort of, it's the amount of cars you can attack is somewhere between, they have to be within less than Pittsburgh away and closer than 5 miles from my house.
So we assumed there was some range limitations, right?
Right. So then I was well, what's the range?
How do you test those, Charlie?
Well, you turn your car on at your house, and you hop in your other car, and you just start driving. And so here I am, an hour from my house at some truck stop trying out the exploit. Still works. So if you notice, there's some people gassing up their race cars and shit in the background, but we're hacking cars. Yeah. So it still worked there. And then finally, I was Chris, can you try it again?
Can you try computing better? And I was I will.
So
and
all he has
did.
to do is run telnet port 6667. That's it. I'm not asking him to
Well, I was doing it from the phone before with some shit telnet client for Windows Phone, and it was wouldn't connect. Instead, I had to pay more money for Sprint, $9.99 more a month to make it a hotspot for my phone, and then turn the hotspot on, made my computer connect to the hotspot. lo and behold, I can touch Charlie's car from Pittsburgh, and we find out later that this is nationwide, probably a big chunk of North America, Canada, Mexico, all you continental United States.
Right. So now you can hit any car on this vulnerable port in the whole country from the comfort
of your own home.
So like way better than Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Way better.
All right. So yeah. So that was fun and a little scary. So then it was like, well, I wonder. So by now we had told Chrysler about this. But they hadn't really told us like how many cars there were, what kind of cars, or like so. So then it was like, well, let's find out for ourselves, like what's out there in the wild in the car world. So you can just start scanning, right?
Yeah. So we used mass scan because Nmap was really slow, and mass scan was really good. And there was basically we saw that every time the car booted up, it was on one of two Class A's, 21 dot and 25 dot. And so we just started scanning those things.
Yeah, so there are either thousands of IRC servers on the Sprint network, or there were lots of vulnerable cars.
Either way, we figured a win. It's like we either found a cool IRC server or a vulnerable car. Win-win for me.
Right. So then, remember, this dbus service, it's just like a web server that you could like ask for information.
Make a request, and it gives you information.
Right. So we made a couple requests for these cars, because every time you turn on your car, it gets a new IP address. So it's like, well, maybe it's just like 5 cars that some dude's just like power cycling like crazy.
Yeah.
So we got, you can get, we didn't always do this, but you can get the GPS info, like you saw on the tracker, and then you can get like the VIN number. And so then with the VIN is unique, so you can start to figure out like how many cars there really are. So then we built that into a new scanner called Shut Up Dave.
It's called Shut Up Dave because Shut up, Dave. It's not junk hacking anymore.
So Dave Eitel likes to talk about junk hacking and how there's no impact. It's so easy. Well, this was actually kind of easy, but it's so easy. There's no impact. It's like, why are you wasting your time?
Why are you hacking your toaster?
Right. So anyway, shut up, Dave.
Yeah.
So this is a scanner. It runs. It finds cars that are vulnerable. It gets their VIN number, and then it looks up the VIN to see what kind of car it is, and then it's like, I found a Ram. I found a Grand Cherokee or whatever. So then you can find out all the vulnerable cars, like how many there are, what kind there are. So it was kind of fun. And so here's the cars that we found on the internet that were vulnerable to this particular attack.
So it's really cool. It's everything from a Dodge Viper, and we found the SVT ones that are complete badass Dodge Vipers, to your pedestrian, Chrysler 200. So it's a wide range.
It took all of my white hats. I had like 7 on not to hit the Viper.
I know.
I was like, the Viper, he wants to play hip-hop. I know it.
I know he wants Hot 103.
But I didn't do it.
But we didn't do it because we're ethical.
Yes, super. And so one of the things we learned from this, because at the time, Chrysler was telling us it was only 2014 vehicles, and we found there were some 2013 and some 2015. So that was kind of cool.
So we had to create our own numbers. We had to try to figure out how many vehicles we thought were out there.
So then one day I was out running, and I was like, well, we should be able to figure out how many vehicles are based on the number of repeats of VINs we see, right? So if you see tons of vehicles and they're almost all duplicates of each other, then there's not that many. But if you almost never see a duplicate VIN, then there's tons. And I was like, there must be a formula for this. And I thought about it, and then it's like I just Googled, and some biologist has something for owls.
That's how you track owls.
Right. You tag them.
And cars.
You tag owls, and then when you find them, based on how many of them are already tagged, you know how big the population is. And so the population, I don't care about the population of owls, but I do care about the population of vulnerable vehicles. And our estimate turned out to be 400,000 or something.
Yeah. Which we now know we are way off by a magnitude, and there's 1.4 million cars.
I mean, we're only off by 1 million cars.
Give or take 1 million.
So anyway, the owl thing didn't work very well.
But we wanted to be conservative with our estimates. We didn't want to overinflate how many vehicles were out there because we didn't actually know.
All right. So at this point, we can do stuff on the radio. We should be ready to go.
Not the case, right?
I mean, it looks like it in this diagram that you presented to us.
I made this diagram, and now I have to call myself a liar because this is not exactly how it is. Now, while the radio does touch the CAN bus, both CAN buses, and communicate with the outside world, we did see after ripping those apart, right, there's 2 separate chips. So what you have to do is you have to get on that OMAP chip, which we showed you can do with 4 lines of Python. But how do you, send arbitrary CAN messages? That's our end goal, right? Physically control this car. Luckily for us, the air gap wasn't actually an air gap. The air gap was an air gap with a SPI line, serial line, in between those 2 processors.
Right. And so all the cars that we've ever talked about or, met people and told us about, there's always a separation. So when car companies say our our entertainment system, our telematics system is separate from the physical system of the car. This is what they mean. They don't mean it's actually separate. They mean that it's going to take two steps to attack.
It's two separate chips, but they're not actually separate.
Right. But it is true, like, from the OMAP chip, you cannot send arbitrary CAN messages. It is impossible.
That is true. Or well, at least we didn't find a way because we gave up after a while and figured we could do something else.
I would state that it's impossible. Yeah. But the OMAP chip can kind of relay messages to the V850 over this serial peripheral interface and say, like, hey, you know that fifth CAN message you know about? Like, send that one now. But you can't just send, like, arbitrary ones.
So, you look at this stuff, you look at architecture, and then we have to figure out, hey, maybe we can update the firmware on the V850. Luckily for us, we knew the firmware existed because it came in the ISO that you can download online. Also...
So when you get the USB stick to update your car, you stick it in, and one of the things it can do is update that V850 chip. So and the USB plugs into the OMAP chip. So somehow the OMAP chip can like update the V850 chip.
Yeah, exactly. And luckily for us, on the head unit, there's IOC update. And what that does is it takes a firmware image and will update the V50 for you from the OMAP chip.
It's too bad they signed it, though.
Yeah.
Cryptography.
They didn't. There was no code signing. There was no validation. So you can do whatever you want to this firmware. Maybe you backdoor it. Maybe you do whatever.
Right. So we backdoored it.
Yeah.
So where you could talk to it and tell it to send arbitrary CAN messages, which is what we really want.
The next process involves basically just reading data sheets for days, right? Just data sheets on data sheets on data sheets. You finally get that firmware that we want to look at, load it in IDA Pro, find some base addresses, create the segments. So this took a really, really long time. We're breezing through it because the paper covers it, and like honestly, no one wants to watch IDA Pro screenshots. We eventually found out.
I do.
What's that?
I do. Okay. I really like talks that are just pure IDA Pro.
We eventually found out. Okay, here's where you can send CAN messages. Go back to.
We gotta get moving here, Chris.
I'm moving. You can send CAN messages. We figured out all the RAM regions, all the code regions to do that, but there was no methods to actually call that from the OMAP chip. So what we did is found the SPI parser that did the serial communications, and then overwrote that code to jump to a trampoline down to our handwritten shell code that would actually take bytes from the SPI line and interpret them as CAN data messages and then send them to the CAN bus.
Right. So, and then as an aside, if they had signed the firmware so we couldn't have just flashed it, there were actually a bunch of memory corruption bugs in the way they interpreted the SPI communications, so we could have still gotten arbitrary code.
There was just a bunch of mem copies to fixed size buffers coming from the SPI line, so we would have got it anyway. Anyway, there's a bunch of handwritten shell code that we wrote, put in the ROM, and that way we could send commands on SPI to actually send arbitrary CAN commands.
Right. So read the paper for more information on this, but it wasn't designed to have the one chip just update the other one while you're like driving around. It's supposed to be designed a person hitting stuff, a person sticking in USB sticks, but you can get around all that.
So we'll tell you how to get around that. Read the paper.
But if you're not perfect, and I wasn't perfect, if you screw up the flashing of that second chip, you're at the dealer.
But luckily we bought the Jeep brand new, so it was covered under warranty.
Yeah, man.
So Charlie would go in and be like, my head unit doesn't work anymore.
Bravo, Chrysler. They really stand behind their products.
Customer service is amazing.
It's good, yep. And I would like to just point out that I never, ever lied to them. I would say, the screen doesn't turn on anymore.
That is absolutely true.
Completely factual statement.
Didn't qualify it with, it's because I bricked the firmware trying to backdoor it.
And then they'd be like, well, we're going to try to like just restart it a couple times. I'm like, that's not going to work.
Have at it.
Right, okay, we're going to disconnect the battery from it, and then I bet it'll work.
Yeah, whatever, man.
But anyway, so a couple mistakes, a couple times I was at the dealer, but it was all good. So now we've sort of given you all the pieces on how to send arbitrary CAN messages from across the country to a car. Let's just go over real quick again how you would do it. First step, you got to find an IP address of a vulnerable Jeep. You can just scan for that. If you want to find like your girlfriend's Jeep, it's a little harder. You would have to actually see like either GPS or her VIN and then just scan until you found it. Like we don't know a way to get the IP address of like
a Jeep. We only had 2 crappy Sprint phones. I'm sure you could figure out a better solution for finding unique vehicles.
All right, so you tether to a Sprint phone, and then you exploit the OMAP chip with the 4 lines Python.
You spend 3.5 months reversing the firmware, write your own backdoored version, then update the V850.
Well, you only have to do that one time though.
Yeah, you only have to do that once. It's good for a long time after that.
And then finally, you send CAN messages.
and then you wreck Greenberg into a ditch in a parking lot.
Right. This isn't actually Andy Greenberg. This is just some random dude on the internet.
Wish it was Greenberg.
We didn't attack him. He crashed on his own. All right, so let's see what this looks like in its full glory. All right, so I'm going to send the exploit.
Exploit here.
Boom, that's computer hacking right there. You see that? I hit that key.
He hacked it.
Starts to run.
Okay, so you'll look right now, the exploit's running. It's downloaded the modified firmware, and it's getting ready to flash. Now it's flashing the V850 chip.
And the only thing that happens
Right now
is the screen goes black. So
Right,
you can just
flashing
assume
the
that,
firmware
I don't know,
of
something
a
weird
secondary
happened. It's
chip.
not too alarming.
In the head unit.
So you wait,
that
do-do-do,
can actually
do-do-do,
send
do-do-do,
messages.
and
So,
soon.
go for it, you can do
to
it.
allow it to send
There.
arbitrary.
All right, now
there
it's
you go.
rebooting.
Now it's
So
booting back
right
up.
now
We'll
that
give it a
was
minute
over the
to
air, firmware
come back all the
backdoor
way. At this
update,
point,
and
we have
now we can
control
communicate
over-
with this car, send arbitrary can messages.
Let's do it. Wait, hold on. You
right here.
gotta
he's
see
gonna
the
do it.
arbitrary cam messages before you applaud. Okay, so then I'm gonna hit a hack and another hack. Oh, there it was.
Oh, bang.
Oh wait, it didn't work.
Put
Let's
that
do it
on
again.
CSI Cyber. No,
Did it.
really,
There
they
was,
should.
there was,
It's way
there
more
was.
amazing.
Okay, so there.
And then the windshield wipers go. Right.
Now you may applaud. Thank you very much.
Another thing to notice, there was snow on the ground. That's how long we've been working on this stuff. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a weekend. It's not a hackathon.
Right.
It takes a long, long fucking time to
That
do this
snow indicates how responsible we disclosed. That the fact that we did that
Responsible guys.
when there was snow on the ground.
Just zoom through this. The mechanics tools cost us $7,000. We told them we were Jeep tuners in Western PA. Awesome job by us.
Yep.
It was all Java. We couldn't figure out how to do security access. There was encrypted files. Luckily, it was Java, so we just decompiled it and deobfuscated their strings. They used awesome passwords. You can see there it's generation, but in leet speak. So that's how you decrypt their files.
I tried generation, but I forgot to do it in the lead speak.
Same
and it
here.
didn't work,
That's
so.
usually what I try, but
Damn
not
it.
leet. The files were JavaScript. Those are the unlocking algorithms. Lesson learned, if you're putting that stuff on the mechanics computer, it will always be figured out.
They did, to their credit, put it through some like crazy.
Yeah, there was some like
commercial
in the paper. It
obfuscation tool.
says the commercial obfuscator they used, and
But
we figured
you know,
that out.
that's not going to stand up to a
Yeah.
couple
Good
pros
luck.
like that. Come on.
There were checksums. We didn't know what they did. So when you don't know, you actually buy the piece of hardware that's generated the checksums. You rip the firmware off. You reverse engineer it. You find the checksum algorithms. You port it to C because you're a maniac. And then from C, you port it to Python. I don't know. I like wasting time. And that's what you do. So then now we can send messages by putting our own data bytes in there. Before we had to find them, sniff them on the bus and replay them. Now we can add arbitrary values. So this could be fuzzing frameworks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You need to figure this stuff out if you're going to send canned messages on the bus.
Right. So we can remotely send CAN messages at this point with proper checksums. We know like passwords or any of that kind of stuff for authenticating to the various ECUs. So we're all we got to do is figure out what messages to send. And if you came to our talk last year, you'll remember one of the things we did was we wanted to get the
Pre-collision system.
pre-collision system to engage so we could see what messages it sends. And to do that, we piled a bunch of boxes up and we drove at them, hoping the pre-collision system would engage, we would get the messages, and we could resend them later to make the brakes engage.
And this is car hacking right here. Bang. As you see, the pre-collision system did not engage.
It did not. Nope. So after the talk, a lot of people came up to us and said, "You idiots! The pre-collision system works on some, I don't remember what they said, but basically it needs metal, not cardboard."
So let's go get ourselves some metal.
Metal. All right.
So two psychopaths at Home Depot buying all their garbage cans.
All right. So then what you do is you set up your trash cans in an empty parking lot, you tape a phone to it, and then you try to run into it. But the problem is, like, random people walk by all the time.
And look at them like, why is that camera taped to trash cans?
Right. And then we're like, let's go find
Excuse
some
me,
other-
sweetie, we're about to hit you. Could you get out of the way?
All right. So we found another place that was slightly more abandoned, and then we did it again. So here it is. You'll notice. Oh, let me turn the volume. Yeah. All right. So the camera cuts out here for some reason, which you'll find out why in a second. But listen how fast we're coming around this corner.
This is in front of a school.
Yeah.
Charlie's kid's school.
I spent a lot of money to send my kid to this school. The least he can do is let me drive.
And you'll see
trash
why the camera only got that far.
All right, here's the rest of the story. Let's see if the pre-collision system saves
pre-collision
us.
system.
Save us.
Nope.
No, the pre-collision system does not work with metal trash cans.
That was really loud.
I know. The camera was destroyed. All right. So now we know, so we got the messages a different way. We didn't use the trash cans. So we can start to do stuff.
And that's what our Lewis scripts looked like that would send canned messages, if you're wondering.
So you think it's some really complicated thing, it's not. There it is. So we can do things like turn on the spray and the windshield wipers and stuff. So there you go. It's like kind of hard to see, but it's actually kind of difficult to see where you're going at this point.
That always helps.
Yep. It didn't hurt. Then you can do things like turn signals, whatever.
Again, hard to see. Turn the turn signals on.
You can make the speedometer. So here I'm cruising along at 70.
Going 70. I make it say 40. I swear, officer, I was going 40 miles an hour.
Right.
I have video of it.
Yes. I literally have video that I was not speeding, officer.
Yeah.
You can do the locks. So here I am parking my car.
He's going to get out and lock
You can hear Charlie lock the car.
In a second.
And then over the cell, hacked it, unlock the doors, and then I go to the car because I figured Charlie locked my coffee in the car. Let's hope I can get it back out.
There it is. So he just stole my coffee.
Yeah. And then I stole everything out of the car as well.
All right. So you can do the thing that we did to Greenberg, which is you send this message that makes the transmission stop working.
I cannot move at all.
And now you can't move.
You season drive, you can't go anywhere.
If you look at the really careful, the gear, the actual indicator light is blinking, which it shouldn't really do.
That means you're screwed.
Let's try.
All right. So anyway, I'm stuck.
And I will.
All right. So then there's other kinds of messages you can send. Look at our stuff from 2 years ago to know some details. Read the paper. Let's just watch some movies.
Yeah. Everyone likes movies.
All right. What's this one? He's going to try to brake, but the brake's not going to work.
You hear the noticeable grr.
All right, now the brakes won't work. So when we're driving, we don't line up with a ditch. When Andy's driving,
Why don't you stop?
We haven't been able to do that speed, but we theorize that if we do some more reverse engineering, we'll be able to figure out how to do all this stuff at any speed.
There's just more. This is more details about how to send more complicated attacks on the CAN network.
Basically, knock the ECU offline. Start impersonating the ECU, saying the messages, and then it will only get your message, and there will be no arguing between who's sending the right stuff.
Right. So in the other, when we did the Toyota, it didn't. With the arguing, it just listened to whoever was loudest, and Chris is usually the loudest. And so we would win. But the Chrysler was a little more careful, and if it saw an argument, it just shut down. So you had to do something else. So here I am driving the car from the back seat while Chris is watching from the front seat.
The e-brake's off now. Ooh,
so I can do the steering.
And you can see the actual granularity of control, right? Charlie tried to parallel park the car for me.
Oh, there's a pole coming. I'm going to go right next to it.
So there's like a pole. I'm going to try to just go right next to it.
Parallel park it. Okay. Here we go. I'm going to loop it right by it. There it is. Oh, no, it's a little tight. There we go.
Turn.
Okay, so I almost hit it, but I missed. Way to go.
There's the pole we just
Computer
missed.
hacking.
Excellent.
We're almost done. One more.
Yeah, braking. Again,
All right.
we had some preconditions. We didn't want to figure everything out because we already did this once before with cars. Reverse.
So here's the brakes go on.
Apply the brakes. Man, those are some fly shoes, Chris. Like those.
Those are nice. Okay, so we're super responsible. We disclosed everything like good people. The important thing to notice in this whole timeline is we disclosed in October. The Wired article came out July 20th. All of a sudden, the Sprint network blocks port 667 on July 24th. Super coincidence.
Yeah.
And the recall happened that same day.
The cool thing to note here is like we made two organizations that probably weren't working together very well and forced them to work together, coordinate and fix these things so that people weren't at risk. So that was really a neat thing to be a part of.
The super cool thing, too, is that recalls kind of suck because you have to wait for people to bring it in and cars are still vulnerable. But when you block port 667 on Sprint, no cars are vulnerable. You can't get to them anymore.
Can't get using
That's like the real fix. We found this on the internet. It's a rendition, a recreation of us disclosing to Chrysler in their boardroom, apparently, because that's how you disclose bugs in person in a boardroom.
Duo had been sharing their
we're
findings
chewing
with
'em out.
Chrysler for 9 months,
Get 'em, Chris.
allowing the company to
Get 'em,
release a
Cyber
patent.
Charlie.
Chrysler did not acknowledge
Cyber
or
Charlie
credit them
looks
for their work.
pissed.
I am super pissed, and those guys look super scared. Okay. We tried to get like more cars to do testing on, but for some reason our friends wouldn't let us
No one
borrow
would
their
let us borrow their
vehicles.
Jeep.
Oh, you want to say?
There is a patch. If you look before, all the ports were open. Now they're all filtered. Awesome job. This is what hacking and getting things fixed are all about.
Right. As of right now, we can't hack these cars. So either the cellular network, you can't get there because port 667. On the Wi-Fi, you can no longer buy Wi-Fi from the rip-off place for $30 if your car is not updated with the patch. So no cars are vulnerable. Like, yay,
Awesome.
Yay. That's what we want.
Yeah. Impact. Recall. I don't think a recall this big has ever been done for a software security vulnerability. Awesome. Hackers make a difference. This is a cool time to be a part of all this shit, man. You can actually affect government and business and not just tech companies or infosec companies.
Right. And so this bill or this legislation was introduced the same day of the Wired video, and that's not a coincidence.
Sometimes you can make a company drop $400 million in market cap in an afternoon as well. If we were lesser men, we would have shorted, and we didn't.
We did not short it. So the point here is that they're not going to listen to us, but they're going to listen to like their stockholders when they're losing money.
Yeah.
So that's
change
important.
can happen.
And for all the like InfoSec kind of bugs I've reported my whole career, and stage fright for as like awesome a bug as it is, like those kind of bugs, they just don't do anything to stock value. So this is like it's a totally different kind of thing than we've really
and
ever
FCA
seen.
will follow you on Twitter the day after the Wired article, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah. So if you want to get at least one more Twitter follower, you hack a car, and that company will follow you.
Yeah, basically, awesome. People need to work together. Hackers need to hack. But the nice thing is now we can actually make a difference in other sectors that just isn't ours. Cool time to be hacking. Hackers make a difference. This is awesome. So everyone give yourselves a round of applause for being an industry that's like changing the world.
Thanks.